Hi, friends. Welcome to the Making Spaces podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Sarah Heath, and this is...
Josie Jimenez, the other co-host.
That's true. And today we have a very special guest, and I'm very excited because this is one of my best friends in the entire world, Miss Halleemah Nash, who has done so much in her career and lately has been making space for people with an incredible, I would call it a company right now, or like an empire. I don't know. Rosecrans made, which is an organization that helps people find internships and also find placements for the work that they do. And she's going to talk more about mentoring and what that's meant to her. But this is the space maker. This is the person who, gets you to audition for a dance team without giving you too many details, because literally if she wanted to, she could start a cult because she is so fun and easy to be around. Also, maybe the university she went to, Howard, was a cult. I'm not sure, because I've never met people so excited about their school. And so we have been friends for, I don't even want to talk about how long. That now, okay, Howard, yep, always. And Lakers. We've been friends for so long. We have journeyed together. Our my family considers her family. So it is such a joy to have her on here. So, Halleemah, my question for you is, where is one of your favorite spaces and why?
Oh, first of all, hello.
Hello.
Host and co-host. Thank you so much for having me today. My favorite space is the beach in Mexico. And I try to make my way to Mexico as much as I can. Yo estoy aprendiendo español. And I, sí, necesito practicar.
Okay.
So obsessed.
Practicar más. The reason why I call it my favorite place is because I have had more moments of revelation, of rest, of zen, of sort of self-care on beaches in Mexico. I have spent holidays in Mexico. My sabbatical trip was in Mexico. And it was when I heard probably one of the most powerful sermons that penetrated where I was in the most powerful ways, right there on the beach in Mexico. You know, like the Pacific Ocean is like the largest body of water. And so to be in a place that is so absolutely beautiful within range of where I live, I don't have to be on a flight for like 10 hours. I'm on a flight for 2 hours and I'm there in Mexico with my favorite food, tacos, and my favorite body of water, Pacific Ocean, and just the sand and the reminder that, God is so big, and often the problems that we make huge and the moments that feel overwhelming are so small in the grand scheme of things. That's always just the feelings that I get when I'm in Mexico.
I love that, because you've traveled all over the world. I mean, I remember one time I was coming to your house and you were like, yeah, I'm going to Paris tomorrow, like just by myself. And that confused me. I was like, that is incredible that you would just be like, I'm just going to travel. I want to go. I'm not going to wait for someone to go with me. I am going. And you are such an adventurer, which is incredible. But the place that you love is Mexico. It's true. I love all of the photos, all the beach moments. I'm not jealous. It's great. And I think it's important to talk a little bit about just something that we'll get into all that you've done, because that is incredible. But you've also set up time for self-care, which wasn't always a part of the rhythm of your life. Many of us have gotten frustrated with you because you need to take care of yourself more. You are a people caregiver and sometimes haven't let that happen for yourself. So what made you do what you called the Black Girl Sabbatical? How did that get going? Because it was so inspiring, and maybe one of the most beautiful photo moments just in your backyard, having tea parties and things like that. What made you do that?
So the sabbatical was also presented to me by a friend of mine who had a similar acknowledgement that you just had. Like, Halleemah, I wish you had more time for yourself. And in my, Black woman vibes, we don't rest. We don't, we work, we lead, we power things, we are change makers, we are disruptors, and often we are all go. It is sort of how we're wired. So the idea of rest is countercultural, and one that I have really enjoyed seeing so many Black-led organizations, like really sort of capturing this message of Black women and rest, like Om Noir and the Nap Ministry, and Sweet Rest, which is an organization that was founded by a white woman that is all about giving Black women rest through sabbaticals. And Sweet Rest, and the person that founded it, Caitlin, was like, you know, well, what if you took a sabbatical and then just did Rosecrans full time? And I'm like, what are you talking about? In what world is that a thing? I got a mortgage, I got insurance, I got bills, I am single and fully independent. I have no safety net. That's not a thing. And we kept, I mean, that was a bug that she had put in my ear a while before. And of course, I thought that like sabbaticals is something white people do. I didn't think that it was like something that you see people of color actually taking a sabbatical if they're not a writer writing a book and they're tenured at a university, right? So it was strange to me. And it was exciting because as it turned out, I was struggling with the idea of like, well, what if I did take a sabbatical? What if I took some time off, which I've never done. I've never had more than 2 weeks in between jobs.
I was just going to say, I've never known you to have one job. I mean, from the time
exactly
we've known each other, it's like you would go do something. I was like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm doing laundry for this person. I'm running this, like all these different jobs because that is how you got by.
Yes. I mean, I had a laundry service while in grad school. I had a car service while in grad school. Uber was at my crib, out my dorm, way before Uber existed. I've always had a full-time job and a side hustle. It was always how I sustained my living.
An important thing to say is you weren't just in, so Halleemah and I both went to Duke for Divinity School, and then Halleemah was at North Carolina State, right? That's where?
North Carolina
Central, sorry, where she got a nonprofit management degree because she didn't have enough on her plate and needed to go get another master's while you were choreographing our dance team, running our dance team. And I just thought like, yeah, do you sleep? Yes, I've seen you do it. But like you always, and the thing I think that you're speaking to that I think a lot of people are hopefully learning in this last year is this thing we've put particularly on women of color that like, oh, it's almost like a fetishizing of the hustle, right? Y'all can get it done. And oh, look at, you know, but then what happens is when you start to believe that about yourself. Like, what is my value if I'm not hustling? What is my value if I'm not creating or putting something out into the world? And I think white women, we can understand to an extent, those of us who are single, not married, like the running around, making everything happen, but it's a different kind of fetishment where people are like, oh, you're a person of color.
You can do it.
Yeah. Josie, do you experience that? I would feel like people all the time just expect you to hustle.
Oh my gosh. Yes. As I think we in the immigrant and first generation Latin community have a very similar, like you have to do everything, you have to do all that you can do to succeed, and then a little bit more because we don't have privileges, we don't have generational wealth. We are the beginning and the start of that. So we have to, you know, fight against systems and not having privileges. Yeah, I even with my own family, as soon as I became a photographer, it was oh, Josie can take our pretty pictures and we don't have to pay her because that's easy, right? Or my mom, now that she realizes what I do for a job, she's like, oh well, I want to start a YouTube channel, so you're gonna do all the video editing and lighting and marketing and everything for me, right? And I was like, okay, mother, let's go ahead and do that. And I mean, I also have my therapist calls me a workaholic. I have a full-time job and multiple side hustles, hobbies, passion projects, whatever you call it. Because I did also fall into that trap of like, I have to do it all. I have to succeed. I have to do everything I possibly can in order to, you know, make it, quote unquote.
Now, here's my question for
It's
you,
very common.
Halleemah, because I have watched you like do all kinds of things. From when we got out of grad school, you were working for a basketball team as their nonprofit manager. Some people have maybe heard of it, called the Chicago Bulls. She doesn't sport, so I have to explain it to her. Which, by the way, you working for the Bulls made me giggle because your Lakers love nearly got me evicted because you and I yelled so much at the TV. But they, you did that in Chicago, which it feels like everything has been moving towards Rosecrans. So you want to talk a little bit about how you ended up creating this thing that has made space for people that can't make space for themselves? Like, do you mind just sort of giving a little bit of a back history of how kind of all the pieces that you've done? It's fun as your friend to see them all come together into one thing, but you weren't planning on doing that full time, which is interesting. So and we'll ask questions along the way if you are like, this is a really long and big question, but can you explain kind of how you got here?
No, I'll make it short. I'll give it.
You don't have to. You got time.
I was studying theology and nonprofit management, which was sort of a dual connection between Duke and North Carolina Central, a Black college, a stone's throw from where the campus was. But it started there in me thinking about how do I take my interest in having a purpose path and what I get excited about: sports, entertainment, community engagement. Like what makes you excited?
Oh yeah, I forgot one more thing. She was a rapper when we were in college. Like literally Compton Virtue.
I definitely had mixtapes.
It's so good. I've still got those mixtapes.
Oh, so embarrassing. But yeah, I've lived the hustle. My goodness. So after Duke, I dived into sports philanthropy, was working for the Chicago Bulls, managing their off the court sort of impact opportunities, went on to work with the Chicago Housing Authority, supporting young people that live in public housing, get access to internships and college scholarships and services. And then I moved on to be an executive director of two different organizations, one after the other, being sort of community impact. Youth pastored for a few years, sort of in between those. And then the last full-time job was focused on workforce development, where I was securing employment opportunities for underrepresented talent, young people of color. But every single job that I have had post grad school, there was even the project that I was doing at Walltown when I was in graduate school.
Oh gosh, I forgot about that.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I was also working. That was one of my many jobs, working at Walltown Neighborhood Ministries, doing community support for young people. I've always included some kind of employment or entrepreneurial opportunity. I've always created some project where, now it was called Chicago MVPs at, the Chicago Bulls. And at the Housing Authority, we launched a summer jobs initiative, and we created a internship where young people could shadow entrepreneurs over the summer as an executive director. There's just always this idea of, I can affirm your identity by saying your Black skin is beautiful, your immigration status is beautiful, your queer identity is powerful and beautiful. But it's a whole other thing to affirm that with an opportunity.
I'm having goosebumps.
With economic opportunities. So like, yes, your Blackness is beautiful, and I'm going to give you a summer internship where you get to shadow a Black entrepreneur that's doing what you one day hope to do. And that was something that was very life-giving to me. Because I saw it spark light bulbs in these young people that no longer had to have this traditional, very white patriarchal way of thinking of leadership and entrepreneurship, but their first entry into the workforce were with people that look like them, so they could speak Spanish over the summer with their manager who is a native Spanish speaker. And I had a young person, I remember asking him, wow, you have this architecture internship and you're interested in architecture, like how was it, what was the best thing about it? And he said, I could speak Spanish with my manager.
I could be me in the space.
The fact that you could speak, because he talked about having a summer job and not being sure if you could speak Spanish, like to your colleagues, and like how that would land, because if people don't speak Spanish or they think that you're trying to do things secretively. I mean, it's just very interesting that one thing can be so powerful. The idea of representation being the most powerful thing that young person took away. I was like, oh yeah, I want to do this. Like, this is what I want to do. Like, this is, and it takes the network that I built going to Howard University, the network that I built working in impact while at Duke, working in professional sports with professional athletes, folks that have a high net worth, all of those networks for the 17 years that I've been at it, I am using to employ young Black and Brown people at Rosecrans Ventures, coaching and securing opportunities. So it does feel like this sort of pinnacle moment where now I'm like, wow, I can reach out to the person who I was in grad school with at Duke because I have this person that's interested in this industry. And so I'm using my LinkedIn network, I'm using my social media network, all to now for the first time asking people for things, and I'm asking people for access to their spaces for my young people.
And what they wish they had had.
Absolutely.
Because I think so much, I'm reminded, I had a meeting the other day with someone who's a little bit younger than us who graduated from Duke Divinity with his, actually he got a doctorate, but and he was talking about someone he had had a conversation with, and it was Lisa Yaboa, someone that you and I both knew. And now to hear that like Space Maker is making space for the people behind, and like I just keep thinking like it's the thing, oftentimes you've created the thing that you had a taste of, because one of the powerful parts of your story is that you were, you know, I remember listening to your TED talk, and after I've, by the way, this is how you know I'm the worst friend. My friend does a TED talk and I watch it 3 times and I text her, not this is so powerful. I say, can I borrow those shoes? And then I was like, but also this is really good. Which is like, I realized later, I was like, your friend does a TED talk and your first text is about her shoes. Anyway,
Bond over shoes. It's fine.
It's fine. It's fine. I was so struck by how it took one person giving you a chance and one person seeing something in you, and then it made you want to mentor and be mentored, like continue that on. Is your hope, as I look at you sowing, I'll call these sowing the seeds, just to speak Christian language, sowing the seeds of like, okay, so now you're going to go out and mentor someone else as you create. Is that sort of, is it that process? Or are you just like loving, and you're back home? How cool is that?
Oh, it's cool. It's expensive, but it's cool. Well, yes, it is, and I mentioned this in the TED talk. It's an opportunity to be in service to the younger me. You know, every day I am serving young Lily, who was in middle school without a lot of examples, but really amazing friends and friends whose parents took me in and mentored me and supported me. Like I am always serving that person in this effort, because I believe, you know, and it's strength based. I'm not thinking about the things that I didn't have necessarily. I'm thinking about the things that I did, like the fact that I just had grit naturally. I had hustle naturally. Like I was entrepreneurial. I could lead naturally. Like I could tap into my culture, like as a choreographer, as a rapper, as an entrepreneur, of all the things that I've been. All of that came from what I learned in the mud. You know, like that came from what I learned, like growing up where I grew up, where we're just ultra ridiculously talented, and find ways to channel those talents and think about some of the things that I lacked and providing those for people that I'm serving that look like young Lily, like at Ludus Park, like, you know, just trying to figure it out. You know, can I be a bridge? Can I be a balm? Can I be a mentor? Can I be a voice that makes a light bulb go off? Those are the things that I think about when I'm trying to power this work and also trying to get companies to pay these invoices and you know, value what this work is, which is another thing.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And I love it because that is not my favorite part. And I always try to like channel my inner, like, there's you and a couple other friends I have who are like, yeah, you need to get paid for this work. Because Josie brought up something earlier. It's not just people of color, but it's also being a woman. Sometimes it's hard to be like, hey, can you also, though, then pay me for this work? Something you said is hitting me really hard, which is this idea of I'm strength based. I look at what did I do, and then how can I replicate that, but also find the strength in other people. Like, what is the thing, when you find your students or those who are they all in college?
Most of them are in college. There's a lot of them, I get them junior year in high school though. But
Okay.
mass right now are college students.
And how do you find them?
So some of it is word of mouth. Some of it is some of the students that I served while in public housing, while in some of these organizations will reach out to me, and they just happen to be the president of the Black Student Alliance on their campus. And then the Black Student Alliance, comes and I do coaching and group professional development. So a lot of it is word of mouth. And then a lot of it is like young people that I've served reaching out to their peers and their friends and their siblings and stuff like that.
And for those who do not live in California or know California, where is Rosecrans?
Rosecrans goes through South. I guess I could call it the South Bay. It is this artery, and I call it an artery because it like is a street that goes through Compton. It's gonna go through Gardena, through Manhattan Beach. Like there's all of these spaces that Rosecrans actually goes through. But for me growing up, I didn't know nothing about Manhattan Beach or any of those other places. I the Rosecrans was where my elementary school, where Mayo Elementary School was off of, Whaley Middle School, where I went to middle school. I traveled through Rosecrans to get to McDonald's, where one of my first jobs was. So it was this place that I had to navigate one block after next. Like it's also a street where vice flows, right? It's also corner boys that work off Rosecrans. But I had to learn how to navigate travel from one place to the next. I had to navigate the local roads in order to get to that big, bold highway that takes you to wherever your future is. And so that's why I named the company Rosecrans.
And just so you know, Josie over here. Josie, where are you from?
I'm from Southgate. I'm sure you know where that is. I'm from the other side of Rosecrans.
Yes. I love Southgate.
I was just thinking.
Theater there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We go to movies.
Yeah, Southgate's wild. Yeah, Southgate is that town where my parents lived by Hollydale Park when I was growing up first. And then they moved over a couple blocks to the street right across from Downey so that we still lived in Southgate and paid Southgate prices. But they didn't want me going to Paramount High School. They wanted me to go to Warren High School in Downey. Okay, it was really funny how that works out.
Southgate, Downey, Whittier, all of those areas. It's been like minimal time over there, but I know it well.
It's funny because people from
Downey's
LA
bouge.
know it. Yeah, Downey's bouge.
It is.
I think it's interesting because we are defined right by the places that we come from in some ways and then where we go from there. So this idea of a road, and learning how to navigate that, and then the people that taught us how to navigate these roads. I actually think about when I moved to California, Halleemah and I have a friend named Precious, and this is going to sound sad. My only friends were Halleemah and Precious. So I started my first day in Irvine, which is not, it's a very wealthy area. It's predominantly white, Asian and Persian. And I'm not from California. So I got this job and you guys rode the train down to see me and you were like, this is Irvine? You'd never seen it before. And I was like, but it's only 40 minutes from where you grew up. And I remember Brett just being like, it's another world from where we just came from. And I think that's the thing is if we don't know where we're from, we don't know kind of where we're going. And it's not about abandoning. I mean, I think about how everything has brought you back home, but you had to do all that you did to get back to Rosecrans.
Yes. And Kendrick Lamar talks about that in a song called Home. Mama, actually. And where he talks about all the things that I know. Like I know street shit, I know advertisers and sponsors. Like I know all of these things, but I didn't know anything until I came back home. And this idea of this full circle moment that life can take you to all of these places and these beautiful opportunities. And when you come back to the place where it all started, there is much more revelation about what those things and places meant, and how they inform what you can do in your original earth. And that's kind of how I feel right now. It's Los Angeles is far different than the place that I left it. I left at 18. So I'm 18 years old. You living with your parents or hopping around or whatever you're doing. But when you come back to live somewhere as an adult, it's a much different place. You know, how you travel, how you engage, like, you know, sort of doing things as an adult versus getting on the bus and going to the mall with your friends and coming home at your curfew or whatever the existence is. And so now there is all of this relearning that I'm doing. And there's all this reflection like, wow, I remember being in Italy having a conversation with a woman about Compton and, you know, like her perception of what Compton was because they just know about NWA, didn't even know who Serena Williams was. So there was nothing outside straight out of Compton, right? And having this conversation about the perception of Italians in the US and the perception of Compton in a place like Italy, and just thinking, man, like the times that I've traveled internationally, like traveling solo by myself, knowing how to navigate, knowing how to get to the throughways, knowing how to tell when somebody's trying to finesse me, right? Like knowing how to tell if somebody is like, you know, somebody that you don't necessarily want to vibe with, like all of those things that I learned at home that I didn't realize how valuable they were in being able to navigate these large spaces until I came back here. And now I'm reminded of so many of those things, especially in a quarantine where you have so much thinking time, you have all the thinking time. And I am so grateful that the journey, and however long I stay here, who knows, however long I'm here, the fact that I could come back here, become, you know, I left here as the first in family to graduate college, and I come back here as the first in family to own a home in California. And so where the journey is taking me and the ability to build anchors here, and serve young people here, and being able to have the city of Compton as a client of mine, and like serve my city as an entrepreneur. It's just, there's so many full circle moments. I'm like on a podcast with Sarah, who, you know, we met in 2002 and navigated the crazy place that is Duke University. I'm a Tar Heel fan, but that is Duke University, and be able to be in the spaces that we're in right now to have this conversation. It's just, everything is full circle where I am now.
It's crazy because I think about, so for both of us, Duke, I like it a little bit more than she does. But it was not home for either of us when we got there. We were a bit of the outsiders, definitely, a little bit. I mean, we were the outsiders, and I think we just sort of found this way to negotiate a space that didn't feel like home, and we didn't. For me, I hadn't studied any of that, so for me, it was a whole new language to learn. Um, Originally, a lot of our classmates weren't people that I would have necessarily, how do I say this, wanted to be around, and I'm not sure they would have chosen me to be around. And so it just was a lot of late nights on each other's floors. Like, what the hell are we doing here? What?
Like, why are we here? Why did we choose this?
I'll never forget. One of my roommates actually said to Halleemah, "You're my first Black friend," and you looked at me like. Because it was late at night and she was trying to be like, have a woke experience. But you and I were like, oh, what is,
Get out of here.
What is happening?
Like, oh my God. Thank you for sharing, but bye.
Bye. I think there was this great experience of like, we don't fit in, so we're going to make home. And then people became home, like you and Precious and like Ashley, and like these people who are just became home, who they didn't feel like they fit in. And I feel like that's kind of what your work even is now. It's like, okay, I'm going to look at these spaces and places that were made for certain people, and it's not us. And so then how do I, once someone figures out a little bit how to make it their space, how do I then help them bring other people up? And the cool thing is I remember when you moved to Chicago, my parents tell this story because it's like they're one of their favorite, because Halleemah, again, poor thing, got adopted. Poor Josie got adopted into the family last night. So she's now one of the heroes. But we were at a Mexican restaurant. You had just bought a pair of boots because you were moving to Chicago, and you're like, I need winter boots. And my mom was like, oh, I want to see your winter boots. And they were like high heel and so cute. And my mom goes, oh no, Oh, Chicago is, and like a month later, you call me and you're like, why do people live here? Why?
Ooh,
You
that
couldn't
winter,
find your
Amen.
car.
those
And
winters.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh,
but it was all part of this like weird thing where you were learning even how to navigate winter, how to navigate, and now those people are your contacts, the people that you're now able to help folks from your home. And I think it's such an encouraging piece of when you're sitting in the winter of whatever it might be, and you're like, why the hell am I doing this? Like, I remember, if you read my journal from our first couple of months in grad school in 2002, um I didn't want to be there. And I was like, why does God have me here? I don't fit in. And now my favorite people in the world are from that time.
yeah.
It's like we had to like go through all of that to become people that we are. And I think so often when we're in that like quarantined moment of like, this is the worst, this winter sucks, we don't, we need to look around and see what we see. And that's what you guys actually taught me a lot of, like, all right, what's good about this? We have a friend, Mike, who used to say, like if something bad happened, he'd be like, look at the devil. Like if his computer didn't turn on, this
Still
is,
does.
yeah, still does. Look at the devil. Look what the devil has done. And if something good would happen, he'd always be like, well, bless the Lord. Look what the Lord has done all the
Oh,
time, which
bride. Mm-hmm.
Mike McBride, which is like, but actually for me, right? Like to actually pause and be like, oh, look how great that is, when I didn't have that as a natural inclination. So I
Yeah.
think there's like that giftedness of struggle,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, they're lilies in the valley, right? You know, like that grow in dark places.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think that, I mean, a lot of people love Duke, but it was a dark place for some people. Some people's experience in that space. And I mean, you know, you start to figure out how to navigate, how to graduate, how to get through it, how to build relationships, and you know, how do we make sense of our lived experience, the good and the bad, the dark and the light? How do you make sense of the hard stuff? And I think that that is also why Rosecrans is important to me, because I've had such a hard time being other. I've
Mm-hmm.
had such a difficult journey in being the only whatever in the room, the only woman, the only black person, the only person that's first gen, the only, I mean, I've had so many other and only experiences that have been painful, mostly mentally, because of
Right.
the narrative that you play in your mind about whether you deserve to be there, about whether or not you can thrive there,
Mm-hmm.
on like why do I have to be the only one, like all of the narratives that are often toxic and take you out of the space that God is
Yes.
to you to be in. And because I have been other and it has been the pain of my journey, I've turned it into the purpose of my journey to make sense of it, and to make sure that young people that are navigating the same thing, that they don't wallow in the pain of the valley, but they can see the lilies in the valley.
Yeah, the other experience, I think it was so hard to watch somebody you love go through what you went through. Some of the things, the little things, the microaggressions, getting pulled over. Um, I remember shopping one time and you were like, they're gonna follow us around the store. And I was like, what? And I feel like it's opened me up, and um I hate that it's like, oh, a friendship is a thing that, but it's true, watching what you had to go through and not even being aware until you see it, somebody that you love, a relationship where you care. And I'm like, what do you mean you were pulled over? Your brother got pulled over coming onto campus one time and asked if he belonged there. And
His ID, they pull guns out on us. Mhm. I remember that distinctively. Could
I
have been a
remember that
moment.
day.
The way that we mourn Black men that are gunned down by police officers. I always think about that moment when
Me
that
too.
man pulled his gun out and said that we were making threatening gestures with our hands, and that we better stop. And, you know, show the wallet, put the wallet out, on the ground so we can show our IDs. And, it as painful as that experience is, having to talk about it and having to have dialogue about it on that campus was also very difficult.
Yes.
Because there was, then there's the white splaining of what that experience actually is. And then having so many friends that can't necessarily connect to that experience, they just feel bad about it. And being in a place where it's hard for people to empathize with your experience is another level of otherness that is hard. But again, praise God, we survived that night. And I talk about it all the time when I talk about the Duke experience, because I do want people to know that you see sort of a beautiful campus and you see a flashy situation, but there are people that experience being other on those campuses. And how do you serve those people excellently, the same way that you do the people whose parents donate $1 million a year to Duke University's endowment? And if that responsibility is too much for you, there is Rosecrans that can help young people navigate that.
Right.
If the systems are not changing, right?
Yeah.
Which I'm not confident in their ability to.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of companies that are trying and a lot of higher ed institutions that are trying, but I'm not holding my breath.
I think there was also that moment too of like, because we didn't have language for that, right? It was just anger. But I don't think I've ever doubted stories. And I don't know that before that, I think I might have been one of those people who's like, well, I wonder what they did to, like, but no longer do I wonder what they did. Now I grew up with parents that taught us empathy and all that sort of stuff, like pay attention. But I think it's a horrible thing to have to be the one to hold on to that for people. Like, yes, these stories are true, because let me tell you what happened to me on a prestige, whatever it might be. But again, those are the stories that have helped people learn how to ally and learn how to believe and learn how to and not allow the idea that as long as you play by the rules, everything works out. No, incorrect.
Another unfortunate thing, because then we have to experience these atrocities as people of color, and then we have to teach white people how to engage them. Like, we have to become professors in the experience. We have to, be the diversity, equity, and inclusion people that are helping people understand. And that also sucks, because books are available. Google is live. Like white people got to get in the business of learning
on their own.
And we can't always be in the seat of professorship. So and I mean, it is a beautiful thing that there is an awakening that's happening with a lot of folks, that happen through relationship and happen through exposure and conversations. But I'm just not trying to be the casualty of that.
No.
Often we are, that contributes to the exhaustion of, like, just trying to figure out how to be Black and thrive in this country that has been built on annihilating that opportunity. So every day it is an exercise in living my truth, in speaking my truth, in having quality relationships where I can be my full self, and helping young people that are the future and are the next generation know how to navigate that. Know how to navigate those conversations, because that was hard. Like, I went to a Black college, and I grew up in Compton. So I didn't have to have some of the conversations that I had to have once I got to Duke. And I'm grateful for it. I'm very grateful for it, because I still have friendships with folks that I had very hard, courageous conversations with. That are now in spaces where their leadership is informed by some of those courageous conversations. So I'm grateful for it, because it takes that. We live in silos, and you grew up in Mississippi, so that's a whole other.
I came from Canada and moved to Mississippi. I mean, talk about cultural. What the hell?
So we are living in very separate spaces where we aren't always in the same place having these conversations. And they are necessary, so that when we're in our silos, we still embrace the existence of other humans that don't live in that silo.
And these students, these people, they're getting to experience their fullness represented, seeing it in a way that doesn't require them to have to change who they are, or where they can see themselves not having to pass in certain spaces, but instead bring, like you said, a strength space thing, instead of like, all right, I gotta I almost want to use the word like police my behavior this way, I need to talk a certain way in this way, I need to, or what if I'm just me and I show up and bring who God has made me to be, all my experiences, and I learn from people who have been able to use those to navigate a system and hopefully change the system.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
not have to always be the heavy lifter. I mean, I think that's that's been such a gift, is to be able to just say to you, yeah, I'm not asking you to be my Black friend in this moment.
Thank you.
This is my Black friend. Halleemah, I have just loved chatting with you because I love chatting with you. But we have kind of a question that we ask to close out that we love for people to just take any way they want to take, which is like, if there's like one thing that someone can do, a tangible thing, that somebody can do to make space for other people, what would you say that is? Or themselves? It can be for themselves. I mean, I'm telling you, the Black girl sabbatical, I'm going to make you look at all those photos, Josie, because you will just love the aesthetic alone of her just suggesting to other people that they rest. If you were going to say there's something that someone can do for themselves or others just to make space in a tangible way, what would you say it is?
I would say, be a listener, figure out ways to actually listen to experience. I am like trying to take an axe and break down doors in spaces where folks just they're not hearing that 6% of internships went to young Black students, and you've never hired a Black intern, so you might want to think about it. It's like, well, there's no listening. Like, there's also this, sometimes we like hearing ourselves talk, and we are in conversations where we're not gaining anything from who we're talking to, because we're not actively listening to experience, listening to where people are. Because when you listen, you can hear. And if you can hear, you can understand. And if you can understand, you can empathize. And so that creates space for people. If I can empathize with your experience, if I can understand who you are, if I've listened to your journey and listened to your story, then I kind of break down the walls that exist because of all of the labels that we put on ourselves, like single, married, Baptist, Presbyterian, Republican, Democrat, Southern, city. We put all of these labels on ourselves that anchor those silos. And I think that our ability to really listen to one another and understand creates space.
I love that. Josie, do you have any more questions? Speaking of being quiet, we've just both been drinking in everything you've said. I love it. Josie, any thoughts? I'm sorry, I didn't make space for you. I just got really excited to see one of my best friends, and I'm like, Josie, I'm sorry.
I mean, it happens. It happens. No, I empathize as a first generation Latinx woman. I empathize.
Yes.
It is a very common experience among all of us who are not white Americans, I guess.
Yeah.
But such is life.
I'm grateful.
Onward and upward.
Yeah, onward and upward.
Las conversaciones es muy importante. Necesito más hermanas y amigas con understanding. ¿Cómo se dice understanding en español?
Entendimiento. Ay, I can't even do it. Entendimiento.
Muchas gracias.
Oh, yeah. Oh. Language switching is hard, guys. Let me tell you.
I think it's incredible. Just both of you, your stories. I'm so grateful that I get to be in relationship with both of you humans. I'm grateful that we get to make space for each other and our conversations and each other's stories. If people want to find you, where can they find you, Halleemah? Where can they find Rosecrans? Tell us.
At Rosecrans Made, at Rosecrans Made on Twitter, on Instagram, and also on TikTok. We are on LinkedIn. Our Rosecrans website is www.rosecransventures.com. Follow us, reach out if you have internships available, or even if you don't and are interested in creating space or developing the talent in your orbit, reach out to Rosecrans.
I love it. All right, Josie, where can people find us? And she always has to take a big breath because I make her say all of the things.
Well, you can find us primarily on makingspacespodcast.com. Everything is there if I forget anything. You can find us on Instagram at Making Spaces Podcast. You can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/makingspacespodcast. YouTube, you can search us Making Spaces Podcast. You can find Sarah at Rev Sarah Heath on Instagram, and you can find me at Josie Takes the World.
On all the things, including Twitter, if you want some fiery first takes. It's good. Guys, this has been so great. It's been wonderful to chat. Join us next week where we will be
saving a space for you. Bye.
Bye. All right, I'm going to stop recording.